I know. This was open day.
We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order at this time. If we could please have the roll.
Councilmember Edney?
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Silva?
Present.
Mayor Villegas-Walker?
Here.
Councilmember Sanders?
Here.
Councilmember Solomon? Absent.
If you could all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The invocation. Our Heavenly Father, we come this evening with our heads bowed and our hearts are humbled. We come with complete submission. We're asking for your divine guidance as we move forward on the issues that are on the agenda that will affect the lives of so many of our residents. Lord, we also ask a special blessing on families that are bereaved. We ask that you would touch those loved ones with your hand of mercy. Then, Lord, we ask for blessings upon the men and women who are on the battlefield fighting for the freedoms that we have so learned to enjoy. Those who paid the ultimate price, we ask that you would surround them and receive them in your kingdom. And for their families who are suffering the loss, we ask that you would be with them in this hour of need. Lord, we ask a special blessing on our colleague, Mr. Solomon, in his absence. These and all blessings we ask in thy name. Amen.
Thank you, Sedalia. Please be seated. City Council met in closed session today at noon. We'd ask the City Attorney, Mr. Hernandez, to please give us a report out on closed session items.
Yes, Madam Mayor and members of the council, I'll go ahead and report on both the redevelopment and the City Council. The council did meet as the redevelopment agency from 12 noon until 12:20 p.m. and considered the acquisition of the 4th and Main property from various property owners, and there's nothing to report, but direction was given to staff with regard to that item. And then the council also met in closed session and commenced after the RDA closed session, considered labor negotiations, and then there are 2 items I believe that the council will take action on tonight coming out of closed session. Also with regard to pending litigation, the council heard reports regarding City versus Nolte and the McFadden matter. There was some direction given with regard to the McFadden matter, and with regard to Nolte, there's nothing to report. The council did add an item related to the claim of Ramirez, and that was added by motion by Sanders, second by Silva, passed on a 4-0 vote with member Solomon absent, and that was for information purposes. And the council did consider Countryside versus City of El Centro, and with regard to that matter, Mayor Walker has abstained previously and did abstain in this instance and left the room. The council staff gave a council report with regard to that matter, and there's no action to report. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. This is a public meeting. If there is an item on the agenda on which you wish to be heard, please complete a speaker slip and provide it to the city clerk. When the item is announced by the mayor, come forward to the microphone, address yourself to the council, stating your name and address for the record. Unless your time is extended, there is a 3-minute time limit for each public presentation. If you wish to address the council concerning any other matter within our jurisdiction, you may do so during the public comment portion of the agenda. At this point, I'll defer presentations and announcements by mayor. The scheduled public comment will actually take place during the RDA agenda by Mr. Curtis. I would ask at this time, in way of housekeeping, we do have 4 items to add to tonight's agenda. We'll take each in order for a motion to add. First would be a resolution of the City Council of the City of El Centro establishing terms and conditions of employment, including compensation for fiscal year 2009-2010 for certified water treatment plant operators. Motion to add.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Edney, second by Silva. Please ballot.
Motion carries 4-0.
Motion to add resolution of City Council of City of El Centro establishing terms and conditions of employment, including compensation for fiscal year 2009-2010 for certified wastewater treatment plant operators.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Silva, second by Sanders. Ballot.
Motion carries 4-0.
Motion to add resolution designating authorized agents to provide to the Office of Emergency Services for all matters pertaining to such state disaster assistance, the assurances and agreements required.
So move.
Second.
Motion to add by Sanders, second by Silva. Ballot.
Motion carries 4-0.
Last item to be added is a resolution to award a contract to Wilcox Contracting, Inc. in the base bid amount of $265,855.34 for the Adams Avenue Indoor Sports Complex parking lot project and establish a $26,000 contingency fund.
So moved.
Second. Okay.
Motion by Silva, second by Edney.
And the motion carries 4-0.
Okay, very good. We'll move on to our consent agenda. I do believe we have some minor modifications to items 7 and 8 that will be part of the record. The landscaping, the Legacy Ranch landscaping and lighting, and also the Buena Vista landscaping.
We do?
What are they?
There was, at least on the copy that we received, and maybe it was just as part of the agenda report, that didn't form the actual. Part of ours, so nope, I think we're okay with
I think
the resolution itself, it's okay, I'm
they're
sorry.
okay, right? 7 and 8's okay.
No, it was just in the backup material, I apologize.
Okay.
Okay, so we are looking for a motion to approve. Yes,
And
sir.
item 9, we need to have that pulled separately. Yes. And that's
Item
actually,
9.
we're recommending that that be continued till the next meeting.
Do we have any other items from council to pull? If not, then we'd look for a motion to approve items 2 through 8, 10 through 12.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Edney, second by Silva. Please ballot.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. Moving on then to item number 13, discussion and necessary action regarding renaming of Adams Park to honor Dr. Martin Luther King. Presentation by our ad hoc committee members, Sedalia Sanders and Mr. Silva.
Sit down.
Mr. Silva will go first, and then I will follow suit.
No, please.
Oh, you're prepared? All right. Then let me apologize. I will go first, Madam Mayor. As you know, the proponents had, for some time, been advocating for a naming of either a street for Dr. King, for the legacy of the late Dr. King. While this meets their satisfaction, of course, we know that the council had certainly looked at various avenues and what we might want to consider. Am I, okay, I'm not speaking loud enough? Okay. I want to make sure I'm heard on this, so if those of you in the rear of the room can't hear, well, I was going to say raise your hand. Okay, you're telling me, okay, is that a thumbs up? Okay, that is the finger, no. That is the digit you're using, the thumb, all right? Okay, thank you so much, Chief. I thought I'd add a little levity to that at this moment. The proponents of the MLK street renaming had first come forward to the council asking for a naming of the entire 8th Street. And of course, the council felt that that was not in the best interest. They then regrouped and thought perhaps the council would consider renaming a portion of 8th Street going 8th at Ross Avenue and south to our city limits. And in that particular concept, the council felt that too was not in the best interest. The council asked the ad hoc committee to go back and revisit this project and look at something that would be more suitable for the legacy of Dr. King. And in doing that, the ad hoc committee have come forward with a recommendation. We've talked to the proponents of the project. They are receptive to this recommendation, and that is to name the entire sports complex from Park Avenue, 8th and Park, all the way down to 4th, with a signage at both entry points, 8th Street entry point and the 4th Street entry point, to be named the Martin Luther King Pavilion. We also asked that the council give some consideration for us to work with the proponents on the signage and logos or pictures or something that might be suitable to place in that to be receptive of what we would like to have and something that we think the proponents would agree to. So it would be deemed in our minds, at least the minds of myself and Mr. Silva, as an overlay. So it would be either the Dr. Martin Luther King Sports Complex, Dr. Martin Luther King Sports Pavilion, or something that would be significant enough to encompass that 4-block radius.
Thank you,
So
Ms.
that is our recommendation to the council from the committee, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Sullivan, anything to add?
No, that I think that this accomplishes our discussion that we had. I think that the council agreed that Dr. King does deserve honor and recognition for his contributions. I felt that a partial naming of the street really did not encompass the level of recognition for Dr. King. I am satisfied that bringing this forward to the council, that it will accomplish that. I believe that the proponents of the original naming are satisfied with this. I think that as we move forward, if the council moves forward with this, that we can finalize what the actual name might be, the signage might be, in a way that is acceptable to everyone. But I'm very happy and honored to be able to bring this recommendation to you along with Ms. Sanders.
Thank you.
Thank you. And of course, your background materials, Madam Mayor, will certainly speak to whatever fiscal impact and all the other aspects of it. And so if there's any questions relating to this, we would be happy to try and respond to that.
I did note that the ad hoc committee discussed incorporating a walk of heroes into the recreational facility, and I think that that's just a fantastic idea. Also commend the committee on taking the opportunity to meet with the Community Services Commission as well with regard to the recommendation. And I think that Mr. Silva put it very well that this does capture the greatness, I think, that the council was hoping to achieve with regard to the recognition. So job well done on the task force. Mr. Edmund.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve, I'll second that. Ballot?
Motion carries 4-0.
Well done. Thank you, members of the Community Services. All right,
Okay,
very good.
I saw one member there, so I
Madam
guess
Mayor,
that-
just to
Yes,
know,
sir.
the street renaming policy will be
Yes.
coming back to the council the first meeting in June.
Fantastic. Okay, good to know. All right, thank you for your fine work on that. We will now move on to item number 14, which is a discussion of our general fund budget, including enterprise, special revenue, and capital budgets for fiscal year 2011.
It's not bad.
Thank you, Terry.
Presenting at the end. We wanted to do this while we were awake this time.
Yes, good.
That doesn't mean you can leave early.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm proud to present to you the City Manager's Balanced Budget for fiscal year 2010-2011. The budget includes the general fund, the enterprise funds, special revenue funds, and the construction projects called capital projects funds. The budget presentation for the general fund was a very challenging process for several reasons outlined here. One of the main reasons was the decline in revenues. Three of our major revenue sources, such as the sales tax, property tax, building-related fees, have been declining for this year and are projected to decline through next year. For example, our sales tax is projected to be $8.5 million for next year. Those are pre-mall numbers, so we're going back to before the mall in our sales tax. Our peak for sales tax was back in 2007 at $10.6 million, so that's a very significant decline. For property taxes, we're showing a decline of approximately $500,000 from last year's budget. That's to bring it in line with we have a consultant that reviews our property taxes as well as our own reviews, and the projections are that they're going to be lower next year. Also, the other major revenue is our building-related fees, which we're projecting $333,000 for next year, and that's down from our peak in 2007 of $1.3 million, and that's not including the mall. That was just regular development back then. The other challenge was there's new expenditures. For example, the adult center, that's a new division that in the general fund that the general fund has to fund for next year. Those are additional expenses. Mind you, it's only $52,000. However, that's just one of the expenditures that that increased for next year. We also had, during the budget preparation, the state of California budget deficit, their crisis, projected at $19 to $20 billion shortfall. That was a concern to us during the preparation of the budget because of their ability to raise local revenues. For example, the payment back to the RDA of $2 million that we had to do 3-4 days ago. Another concern that we had to take into consideration was that the earthquake of April 4, the multiple expenditures, and the fact that the city is going to be responsible for 6.25% of those expenditures. That's after the FEMA and the CalEMA reimbursements and assistance to the city. Also challenging was that we needed efforts to maintain the reserves and the fund balance. Again, should this economy continue to decline, we need to have the reserves in place to be able to absorb that. Also, again, back to our earthquake costs, the city needs to front those costs, so we need to have those reserves to be able to pay upfront for those revenues, for those expenditures, I'm sorry. From what I understand, the delay in reimbursement and assistance from FEMA and Cal State could take as long as 2 years, so it is very important that we have the reserves in place to be able to front those expenditures. The process was accomplished by the following: a reduction in expenditures of approximately $3.9 million. As you may recall, during the mid-year budget review for this fiscal year, expenditures were reduced by $2.5 million. That was the basis, that was the starting point for fiscal year 11 budget numbers. However, because of decline in revenues and the additional expenditures, for example, the adult center, the general liability increase, and so on, we had to reduce expenditures for fiscal year 11 by an additional $1.4 million. The reduction was accomplished through a combination of all of these things at the bottom. For example, supplies and services, the object lines, reduction in those line items. Those included, for example, maintenance, supplies, professional fees, and printing, and as well as some other ones. There was also a reduction to the allocation for special events, a reduction for travel and training, all departments, no increase in wages and salaries. It freezes funding for 3 vacant management positions, freezes funding for 2 vacant dispatch positions. We're also prepaying CalPERS, and this is the first year we do that, at a savings of approximately $93,000 to $97,000 this year. The budget has no transfer, eliminates a transfer to the OPED liability for this year, and that is required per GASB 45. There is also a decrease in the allocation for payroll-related liabilities, as well as a reduction in the purchase of capital. So we tried to limit that to what was absolutely necessary, required by law, and so on.
Ms. Salcido,
Yes.
Post-retirement liability, though, we're continuing to fund current liability. It's just we're not making up the shortfall with accrued. Is that true?
Yes, there is 2 parts to that.
I think of it in 2 parts.
Right,
The ongoing and catching up.
We're paying for the ongoing, however, for the amortization, we're not setting aside that money.
Okay.
This fiscal year 11, yes. However, the good news is that we have a balanced budget, general fund budget, with no layoffs and no furloughs. As to the enterprise funds, another part of this budget, there's 2 things that I would like to discuss in relation to the enterprise funds, and those are, that is working capital and the coverage ratio. Projected working capital as of June 30, 2011 for water is $3.7 million. For the wastewater, it's $308,000. The reserve policies for the city's financial policy number 301, the city, it says that it requires that the city establish, dedicate, maintain reserves to meet known and estimated future obligations, such as the 10% for economic unknowns, cash flow purposes, accrued vacation and sick leave, replacement of vehicles and major equipment, and replacement of facilities and infrastructure. For the water fund, the working capital, as mentioned before, is $3.7 million, which is sufficient to set aside 10% for the reserves, as well as for future liabilities, $200,000 for the accrued leave liability, $2.5 million for vehicle and major equipment, and we still have $500,000 undesignated for other purposes. However, for the wastewater fund, as mentioned before, the working capital is only $308,000. That's approximately 7%. If we apply it to the 10% reserve, we don't even have that 10%. We only have a 7% reserve set aside for economic unknowns, resulting in no allocation for these other 2 liabilities. The accrued leave liability, which should really be $198,000, as well as the designation for vehicle and major equipment replacement, which should be at approximately $1.5 million. That is a concern.
Ms. Salcido, the council had the opportunity to review the budget prior to this meeting, and one of the questions that came up was a recommendation that perhaps another rate study be conducted. Was the cost to pay for a rate study, was that included in this budget? It's noted in some supplemental information provided that the last rate study was completed in 2005, but if we're calling for another rate study, was the cost to do the rate study included in this budget?
The cost for the rate study can be out of capacity fees.
Okay.
Okay, and we will include it with the revised final budget.
Richard will
What's
make
the
a note.
estimated cost for that?
Excuse me?
The estimated cost
Do you
for the study? Anybody have an idea?
around $25,000. And the last one that we did was back in 2005, yes.
Thank you.
Let me see.
Well, I'm not even going to go that far now. No.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Another item that I wanted to bring up in relation to this, is bond covenants. When we issue bonds, there are certain restrictions that we have to abide to, and those are called bond covenants. One is that net revenues equal or exceed 115% of the debt service for the year. For the water fund, the coverage ratio is 151%. For the wastewater, it's 118%. However, they both meet the coverage ratio. However, for the wastewater fund, I believe that this ratio is low and might not be sufficient to cover fluctuations in revenues and expenses to improve the ratio. To improve the ratio, one of the things that we can do is either reduce expenses or increase revenues. I believe expenses are conservative, and therefore there is a possibility of, we should explore the possibility of a rate increase perhaps for fiscal year 2012. That was the reason I didn't include it.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yes.
But what we did is typically following a rate study, we have a series of years where there's an increase. I think the supplemental information provided was that the last rate increase was July.
In 2000, yes, the rate increase in July.
So even if we do a rate study this year, it may be some period of time before we
Right.
increase rates. Okay.
And my recommendation was basically a rate study, just some things that we need to look at and start thinking about. It's not included with next year's budget, but it's something that we might have to consider for the next fiscal year. But in summary, the total city budget, all funds, is $96.2 million. The general fund budget is $22.3 million. The $96 million is allocated as follows: operating budget, $43.6 million, capital improvements, $44.4, debt service, $6.5 million, and solid waste, $1.6 million. The city has in place strategic program goals, and those are transportation and mobility, safe neighborhoods, recreation and lifelong learning, and economic development and city beautification. And even with the reductions in our allocations for expenditures, we're able to meet all of the goals. For example, the goal number 1 for transportation and mobility, we're able to meet that by means of the, for example, $16.6 million that is being allocated for street improvements, construction, and sidewalks, $517,000 for a bus shelter, and $1.4 million for bus terminal and improvements. Goal number 2 is being met, safe neighborhoods, operations for police and fire, $14.7 million being allocated. $708,000 for capital for police vehicles, equipment, computers, and $247,000 for fire station number 3 equipment and furniture. For goal number 4, city beautification, we are allocating $93,400 for landscape and lighting districts. And for goal number 3, which is parks and recreation, we're allocating $3.6 million, and the library $586,000. And these are the various allocations. Sports pavilion, $1 million. The major ones, operations. Now, there was a question as to the youth center and the library. Even though those operations, those buildings are closed at the moment, operations have been moved to other locations. And so we still need to allocate for those expenditures, yes. And that is the summary. Any questions?
$1 million a minute. You did very well here.
Ms. Salcido, if we could look, though, just for a minute, with regard to the detail on the youth center, which is found on page 93, the plunge, which is on 94, and then the library, which is, I believe, found on page 97. And I understand if we are reprogramming or reallocating that to other areas, but for example, the youth center, we're showing a budgeted cost for electricity of $23,000. I know we have to maintain the AC on there because of the gym floor, but that seems to be a pretty big chunk of change. I mean, that's almost the same as our actual for full use, so.
I discussed this with the recreations director, and some of the things, for example, we're being charged for utility costs from the school because even though we have a intergovernment agreement, they usually turn off the AC while they're not in operations, but because of our programs, they need to have the AC on. So while our facilities are closed, we still need to pay for those expenditures to the other agency.
Okay, so some of this is going to be a pass-through cost.
Yes.
Okay, and I imagine the same then is true for the plunge, that some of these costs then will be passed through to the high school district for use of their pool?
Yes.
Yes.
And then the library. That's on page 97, recognizing that the lion's share of this is personnel, 252,000, almost 253,000 of the total 463.
Yes, again, I discussed this with the director for the library, and the expectation is, according to him, that we will not be closed for the full year. That we will be able to, sometime during the year, continue with our operations. Also, we have a branch at the community center that we need to, that we have in operations. So that would justify the personnel services cost in this division.
In this regard, could we have at the first meeting in June, could we please have a report from Parks and Recreation and the library as to what's going to be offered during the summer program, different summer programs and where? And then also maybe a longer term plan with regard to the library facility at that first meeting in June? Is that?
Yeah, well, you should be receiving, if you haven't already received the program, Mayor Council, for the summer, because that came to the CSC, actually maybe being printed. It was last Thursday, they had it at the CSC, and they were proofing it. So that is being distributed, I think this week. Then, if you haven't received it, it's coming forth very quickly. Yes, we can put that on the agenda, and we'll have them here. What we may not know is all the details of the main library, because we're also establishing some priorities of how we're going to approach this, all the projects that we have to deal with on this earthquake. And clearly, we're working from the life safety issues out. And we have a water tank and some other damages that are going in front of the line for obvious reasons.
When are we expecting, Mr. Durant, those types of recommendations to come forward? Because I'm wondering if the council should appoint a couple of folks to be working or meeting with you so that there is this consensus that's being generated with regard to the direction that we're going to go with the FEMA funding and alternatives for space and buildings and short-term and longer-term plans.
That may be something that the council may want to start thinking about and discuss on that meeting, where you want to go with it. Clearly, it's a long-term recovery. Well, we're going to talk about that at a later item, but I think it's appropriate here. When we met with FEMA last Friday, a number of things were indicated. Our staff was there, Ms. Salcido, our engineering staff, our RDA director. We have quite a few folks there. And they had to remind us that not only is it a long-term recovery for us, it is a long-term process for them. And one of the items that was discussed on that was how funding works and how you really prepay it. For example, it's when we were in New Orleans 2 years ago, funding was still being developed for the recovery of New Orleans. I think 3 weeks ago on the FEMA website there was a notice of disbursement of funds on the Northridge quake. So these things can extend, and projects are going to take a while to fix. I think it was even one of the hospitals recently was being refunded from the Northridge quake. Our hospital administrator mentioned that just recently. So this is a long-term process, and that's why we're looking to get all the projects together and look at the priorities associated with literally what we're getting out. In the meantime, we have our grant and our stimulus projects that have deadlines that we're not getting any relief on. So we're looking at what do we need to get done first, what has to get handled, but also recognizing we have our major building that has an issue is the library.
Yes.
And that's going to take some in-depth review of how that works, because the entire electrical system's on the old section and the air conditioning unit is on the old section. So it's not a matter of looking at the new section, old section. They're linked together. They're really one unit. So we're moving forward in that process. I'm actually on my next step on this. Mr. Hagan and I are going to be reviewing, going out to the wastewater treatment plant and taking a look at the damage that is still there, so that we have to get that back online. So I think on the first meeting in June, I think Terry and Grace will need to pull together what we believe the projects are. But as you know, we're still having earthquakes, and that project list may be developing and extending.
Yeah, my big concern, Mr. Duran, with regard to the library is that was the only source for some students with regard to the homework center being there, access to reading materials, access to the internet. And unless we're going to be able to turn the community library on South First Street into a fully functioning branch, I think that our community is going to be shortchanged for a significant period of time. So I would really like us to come up with some alternative plans, some ideas with regard to the library.
Yes, and Mr. Banks and I have had a discussion, and I guess what we have is our immediate solution, and then our short-term solution, and then that longer-term solution while we're resolving the ultimate resolution to the main library. Even if we turned it and said, well, we know what we need to do to get the main library open, we're likely looking at a year, just because of the damage we know about. It's the damage we don't know about is our concern.
Okay, so I'm okay with if it's going to take us a year to get the main library back up and running, or some semblance of a main library, but
Right.
What is the interim plan?
Right, and I think then that's what our early next steps are. And I think in June, by June for the second meeting, we should have a better understanding about what we need to do.
Because now private sector is coming out. I think that, I was contacted by a group looking to relocate our entire library to one of our empty buildings on Imperial Avenue. And we'll be sending a proposal. And I said, I don't think we're there yet, but we do need to start articulating what our shorter term and longer term plans are with regard to these buildings. Ms. Sanders?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. Would you not agree, though, Mr. Duran, whatever assessments being done on the library, the water plant, wastewater treatment plant, will be dependent on the funding streams? All of this would require us, the city, to upfront the cost for the repairs and then wait for FEMA to send in the dollars. Is that correct? Is that the correct scenario?
That is correct.
So we're just listening to our finance director tell us we have what in our contingency fund to handle some of these earthquake issues?
It depends on the water and wastewater.
Well, I mean, yeah, I saw the wastewater. You had
300,000 and the
Yeah.
3 point something million.
So
Sure.
the library, though, would be coming from
General fund.
So when we look at that, that's going to be some of the barriers, I think, as how quickly we can actually accomplish this task.
This will be a challenging process. I think the good news, let's just take the wastewater treatment plant. We also have discussions about how we're going to use our wastewater treatment bonds. And we may have a discussion with you, and that's part of this process we're going through. We're going to actually survey that, the plant. Probably the biggest challenge we're going to have is the library. I think that's going to be the one where it's going to test what we're able to do and how fast it's going to happen. The biggest concern is there's no upfront, because recall 75% now comes from FEMA, and so that's where most of the money is coming from. The good news was that only 18.5%, I think, was coming from the state. The problem was that they had a very limited pool that everyone was going to draw from across the state. So they've indicated it's going to be a challenge for them. The key on this is it will get refunded. I mean, the reimbursements will be there, but it may take several years. And that's going to be the challenge. And I'll give you given what you're seeing in this budget, which is what we're talking about now, we're in a pretty good position to deal with this. Quite frankly, some of our neighbors are not, particularly the ones that got hit harder, and they're struggling with is how are they going to front these funds. I think it's going to be a real challenge for us. But that was made very clear, the FEMA representatives, that there's an appropriation that has to be made, and typically it does not cover everything on the first round of appropriations. They cover your emergency services, which was the first week. When it comes to infrastructure rebuilding, it's typically limited by the Congress, and they're constantly going back to the Congress. I think they were trying to get some funds for the Farmers Freeze program released, and it did not pass it failed by a couple of votes. And they're going to try it again I think this week, to try to get that through the Congress. So there's a number of challenges with this.
Yeah, I'm just starting to hear from the community. There's some grumbling about, what is the plan for the library, short-term, longer-term. They want to continue to see us making progress with the Adams, Dr. Martin Luther King Sports Pavilion, the fact that we've taken the swimming pool out of commission and we're using the Central Union High School pool. I mean, telling people that all these things take time, that government works in mysterious ways through a process, is starting to sound like an old refrain to some folks, and they just want to see that we have a plan, that we have some timelines, that we're moving forward and making progress. I think that's what we're at.
Madam Mayor, just a couple of comments. One, I can certainly see the frustration, because I think I sit up here for a number of years and expressed a number of that frustration. That being said, I think part of the problem is, as we sit here and listen, and the people who are involved, is that some members in our community think there is this cloud with money on it. And whenever an emergency happens, whenever an issue happens, you just go and grab money out of that cloud, and it comes raining down on you. As Ms. Sanders very well put, we don't know when we're going to get some money reimbursed. I also like your suggestion of a task force. I think we've used those obviously very effectively, because I think it's going to come down to a situation where this city has to prioritize, because of the long-term repayment plan, because of our limited reserves, and because of the budget situation we're in, we're going to have to prioritize what those things. I'm not against the library being the number one priority. I'm just saying I think the opportunity to look at the entire scope of issues that we're going to have to address, and then we're going to have to come up with some priorities, because we're not going to be able to fund all this up front. We've got $13 million plus worth of damages, and nowhere in this budget, adding up all the reserves and all the general fund, is $13 million. So I think the idea of having some sort of a task force as we go along with this is probably going to become very needed, and whether we need to have some community meetings at some point, I'm not suggesting that now, to explain that fact so that they get a realization that we just can't fund all these things. I will say, certainly, looking at the budget, that certainly staff has proposed continuation of the King Sports Complex, and it's funded. Now, how fast we go on that, complete, but I think we do have a realistic shot to move forward with the indoor sports complex within the next fiscal year, right?
Yeah, we're getting down getting ready to make a recommendation for the designer of that, and from the date of design award to opening, it's estimated 14 months. Is that correct, Terry? That's what we received, I think, from the lead company that we're talking to. And I think we're just about done with their numbers. That should be coming second meeting in June? Okay.
Let me,
Marcelo, yes.
Elaine, I have a couple comments in an overall. One, I think this goes to show, and it's something this city council and city manager and city staff are going to have to understand, as is the people we represent. The typical way of doing business as a city and a county government is going to have to change, and it's going to change drastically. The state is broke. It's continuing to raid us, as we saw in our budget, as we've all worked on, the mayor's worked on, Ms. Sanders has worked on. There's no money at the state, and they still just came and stole $2 million, in which we know will never be repaid. The borrowings that they did under 1A will be repaid. We know that. We realistically know that the $2 million grab from RDA is not ever going to be repaid to the taxpayers of this community. We also know that because we've fought it in court so far, and I think there's one more challenge, but because the courts have upheld it, there's nothing to stop them to come and do it again next year. In fact, I would expect that we will see another raid on the RDA. It seems the most unconstitutional thing to me, because that's not the way the RDA program was set up, but we can argue about that. But we're going to see over the next couple of years some drastic changes in the way we finance city government and the way we pay for services. And we've been living off this ebb and flow of an up economy and a down economy. But even with that, we continue to get farther behind. And as Mr. Duran suggested, and I want to thank Mr. Duran, it seems kind of funny to say, but having sat here this is our 8th budget, I guess, that I've sat here, except for the first 1 or 2, we expect a balanced budget. I think that's the given that this city council has directed staff to do, is that we will not go into deficit funding. And I applaud you for what you've done, but I quite honestly, and I don't mean this facetiously, didn't expect any different. We are not a city that is going to go and blow our reserves. That's what reserves are for, and we're not going to put this city in a standpoint where it is on the verge of bankruptcy, as it quite honestly was in 2003, with no reserves whatsoever. Those reserve numbers may look pretty high to somebody else. As we know, just from this earthquake, that's not a lot of money. The GASB 45 is not a toy. It's not a game. Those are liabilities that this city has to pay for. So, I applaud the staff. It is a lean budget. There's not a whole lot of frills in it. I appreciate, Ms. Salcido, you saying that we're connecting to our goals. I think that's true. I think it would also be true to say we're probably not quite as pleased with some of the services that we're going, and at some point this year and the next year, we're going to start seeing an impact on services. I don't think it's significant, certainly not as significant as other cities throughout Southern California, but, we don't have some of the temporary help that we've had in Parks and Recreation, so that's an impact. As the mayor has said, the library issue is an impact. So there is some impact on our services that we provide in this community, but overall, I look at it and I say, look, we have no layoffs, we don't have no furloughs, we have a balanced budget, and at least we have we can look through the mirror and say that there's a chance that we're going to be able to get better in the next couple of years, as opposed to we're going to be hit such rock bottom that it'll take us 5 or 6 years to recover. So the economy will pick back up in California. It's likely not to be till 2012 or 2013 to where we see it, and our sales tax and our property taxes start to see some increases. But at least we're able to maintain the services, and I applaud you for the work that you guys have put in. That's it.
Thank you.
No, nothing else. I concur with the comments that have been made. It's to have a budget with no layoffs, no furloughs, and just looking at the newspaper earlier, there are other cities real close to us that are not having the same kind of success and work in their budget. So my compliments to you and to Ruben and Richard and everybody that's involved, and the whole city staff, I think needs to be complimented for this.
Sanders?
Anything else, Madam Mayor?
Ms. Salcido, outstanding job to you and your staff. I appreciated in your presentation in particular how you tied our budget into our strategic plan and our strategic focus.
Great, thank you.
That was very well done. I would hope that we could all get a copy of the presentation, or at least
I apologize.
there they are. Okay. Well, so we'll, a parting gift for us. But that was, again, very well done.
Madam Mayor, she wanted us to do the hard work and go through this 150-page document.
Exactly. All right. Well, with that, I'll return it to council. And what's the
I'll make a motion to approve the budget for fiscal year 2011.
Second.
I have a motion by Edney and a second by Silva. All those in favor, please ballot.
Here.
The motion carries 4-0.
Outstanding. Well done. Okay. All right. Item number 15 on our agenda is discussion necessary action regarding the request for support from Imperial County Historical Society to rename a portion of Highway 111 Imperial Valley Pioneers Highway. Janet Thornburg.
Good evening. Janet Thornburg. I'm representing the Historical Society. Also in the audience with us this evening is Rebecca Terrazas Baxter from the Assemblyman's Office. The reason we're here this evening is to request support for ACR 160, which would remove or rename a portion of Highway 111. And the portion of Highway 111 we're looking at is between Interstate 8 and State Highway 78. It happens to run right in front of the Pioneers Museum. And the new name we're looking at is Imperial Valley Pioneers Expressway. We're not real happy about Expressway, but the state is changing it to Expressway. That wasn't our call. The reason the Pioneers Museum, the Historical Society, is pushing for this is to honor the diverse group of visionary pioneers who were the early settlers of this hostile desert region. There were an awful lot of people from an awful lot of ethnic groups who settled the valley, and we looked for a way to recognize all of them, and the name Pioneer is what we settled on. As part of this process, Caltrans requires that we pay for it. We've already got the money set aside to do that, and it has to come from non-state or federal funds, so we have the money set aside to do that. So our request to you this evening is for a support letter to go to Assemblyman Perez, to the Transportation Committee, and a copy to the museum. And I'd be happy to answer questions and also request that you hear from Rebecca. She's got comments from the Assemblyman for you.
Thank you so much. Good evening. Once again, I'm Rebecca Terrazas Baxter from the Office of Assemblymember Manuel Perez. I'm a local Imperial County field representative. Earlier this year, 2 members of the Imperial County Historical Society approached our office to request that the Assemblyman sponsor a state resolution in order to rename a portion of Highway 111 as the Imperial Valley Pioneers Highway. Assemblymember Perez agreed that this resolution and renaming of the portion of the highway would be a wonderful way to recognize the contributions made by Imperial Valley pioneers to the state of California. The early pioneers brought their rich cultural diversity to the region, and their determination, resourcefulness, and diligence led to new business, civic, and cultural institutions in the Imperial Valley. So it's important to commemorate the remarkable history of the settling of the irrigated desert and to honor the people who contributed to the thriving Imperial Valley community of today. Once again, thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of Assemblymember Perez. He respectfully requests your support of the renaming of a portion of the highway, and thank you for this time tonight.
Thank you. I think, in fact, Ms. Connor, we have a letter of support drafted pending the outcome of this vote. Actually, I think it's drafted and signed. Might even, it's not in the mail, is it?
You mean you've already received it?
Hasn't been mailed yet, but it's been drafted and signed. So let's go ahead and move forward with Any comments or questions for?
The only comment, I certainly would support the motion. I was reading the resolution. It would have been, I think, it would have been nice if we put in here, and I know it's recognized the 1 billion annual agricultural economy, but I think it would have been nice if we put something very specific in about the food that comes out of this valley that feeds this nation. Not only California, because we recognize that during the winter, most of the produce grown in this, or served on the dinner tables across this country, is grown in this valley. So I don't know whether that should be adjusted. I'm not saying officially has to, but I hope when he takes this to the assembly floor that is specified as opposed to the dollar industry, which I think sometimes gets lost in the shuffle.
Well,
Any comments?
well, I'm hopeful that as a member of a pioneering family, I'm hopeful that whenever they complete this, that there will be some plaque that would be inside the facility acknowledging whoever these pioneers are, so that the people will see that. I know we have that memorial plaque, but for those who were there in its beginning, do you have any way to do that?
I don't know.
You can't recapture those names?
That would be a good project
Okay.
to work on. That we don't have a plan for that now, but that would certainly be a good project to work on, and I can talk to the board about that.
Yeah.
The other thing I forgot to mention is there will be a naming celebration, and we would be pleased if any of you would be able to attend, and we'll send you invitations
Thank you, Janet.
in the fall.
Ms. Thornburg, I'd like to share with you that this past Saturday night, the local Rotary clubs had the opportunity to host the annual district conference. So we had several hundred Rotarians, both from the Valley and San Diego, and the dinner was actually at the Pioneers Museum. And compliment after compliment about what a fantastic museum, how interesting it is, and actually they were very impressed that we have taken the time to honor each segment that contributed to this valley, and that it's been a grassroots effort, and that each group is responsible for kind of the upkeep and the adding and the refreshing, and they just had many compliments for the museum. I wanted to share that with you.
What people don't know is that's how it was built. Each of those galleries contributed, and then annually they contribute. It's just an amazing museum.
Very nice.
Yeah. Thank you very much for being here. All right, we'll return to council. What's the pleasure of the council?
Motion to support.
Second.
I have a motion by Edney, second by Sanders. Please ballot.
Especially since the letter is written and signed.
Yeah, and in the mail.
We just
How we
want to
doing
make
here?
sure that the mayor does not go sideways with this project.
Well, we're good.
Motion
It
carries
passed?
4-0.
Woof, okay.
3 with one abstention from the mayor who already did it.
I hate to go to jail for sending an unauthorized letter.
And you're on tape doing that
Yeah,
too.
there you go. All right, item number 16, Mr. Duran, this has to do with the cost-sharing agreement, Carroll County Transportation Commission. Thank
Yes.
you very much.
This item is brought back to you as last year when we first, there was a discussion of receiving a bill from the county associated with their support for the IVAC program, which is now the ICT program. Before paying that, we were going to collect certain data and bring this back to you with a recommendation. I'd like to now defer the next comments to your representative on the ICTC board, Ms. Sanders, because she's as close to this process that has occurred as anyone else. Now, Ms. Connor's here for any questions about details associated with documentation. So if you'll bear with me, Ms. Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Duran. This will be presented to you in a trifecta. This is not to say that you're going to win the prize, but I'm hopeful that the council will embrace this. I fully recognize the concern that the council members may have as it looked to this cost sharing and why we're suggesting that we actually pay this. As you know, this city council took great steps and pains in order to move forward and transfer from a IVAG to a full-fledged entity that would address transportation issues. We felt we did that because it would be in the best interest of not only El Centro, but for the region. For the last several years, this city, under several administrations as far as mayor is concerned, have submitted letters of requests asking for some detailed information as relates to the budget. Each time that went forward, we presented it in the fashion that the council had asked. Unfortunately, we were not able to get information, at least not to our satisfaction. The most recent occurrence was that all entities, meaning all the other jurisdictions, have agreed to this funding allocation and the percentage. El Centro has been the lone holdout. And of course now we're being looked at with not favorable eyes as the largest city who had been a strong proponent of this, being the lone holdout. There's a lot of things that are still fluid as it relates to the ICTC. We have an interim director. I will be happy to answer any of the questions you may have, but I hope that you will embrace this and please pay this allocation.
Mr. Edney.
Ms. Sanders, thank you. I had some concerns about the process. As you know, I was very supportive of the formation of a County Transportation Commission. In fact, I think I wrote the resolution to take to the General Assembly at IVAG, what is now 5 years ago. I also will tell you that I was not happy with the way the process was handled. It's sad to me that a bill was proposed in the legislature by the urging of the County of Imperial and the IVAG members before any of these budgetary items, cost-sharing items, employees, housing, cost were ever ironed out. We have, as one of the member agencies, we have been railroaded into this type of arrangement because the law went into effect January 1st and none of this was decided. That's not the way this city does business, and I'm not blaming you because I know that, but that's not good government. My concerns are this. I'm not concerned so much with the cost-sharing agreement going forward. As you know, members of this council, I think, were unanimous in the issue of why we were presented a bill for the previous fiscal year, when at the beginning of the fiscal year we were never told, nor historically has any city contributed monies. And so after the year is over, as I recall, we are presented with a bill and say, oh, by the way, we spent over in IVAG, so here's your cost things. We still never have gotten, and I agree with you, we're never going to get it. They don't keep records at the county that way, so we're never going to get what the proposed budget was and why it went over. Fine, I can deal with that. It's not a significant amount of money. I raised a concern of this, and I'm just asking you a question. Now, I know you're serving not only this council, but in some of your role. But in a technical sense, why would the city of El Centro pay the highest share of any jurisdiction in the ICTC and have exactly half of the vote of the County of Imperial?
I'm glad you asked that. Is that the... Want to add more,
Mr.
Edney? Oh, yes, but I wanted to make sure that was your complete question before I try to answer. Your representative raised the very same issue. And when the information was put forward, as you remember, let's go back, if I may, Madam Mayor. I want to go back to a point that Mr. Edney had raised as relates to how we may have been coerced, if you will, or either railroaded into doing something that we were not necessarily in favor of doing. We all know that the position that this council took when that Senate bill was advanced, the mayor, myself, and staff members were in Sacramento speaking to our representative, our state senator, as she was the writer and the carrier of that bill. She initially concurred with us as to why we would have a utility on this Transportation Commission. We lost that round. Fast forward till now, we're ready to move and actually have something in place because it came into effect. The regional council members, who ultimately became the ICTC commissioners, are now working diligently on the merging of the two sets of bylaws, LTA and the old IVAC, in order to make them compatible with the Senate bill. Now, to the specifics of your question, why is El Centro a city who have a population greater than our other cities, but certainly should not be deemed a city that have a population greater than the county and or IID? When this was placed into the mix, we registered our complaint, and we registered it strongly. We were overruled and voted down, with the understanding and the explanation that was at least presented to me at the regional council and through the commissioner. I'm sure that same information came forward through the management committee. It is arbitrary as to a number. So what they decided to do was make a recommendation that all cities would pay a certain amount based on the population. IID would pay a certain amount based upon the 4 highest with an average. And then the county would pay somewhere in between. And that's how that funding stream and how those percentages came forward. We not only registered our complaint once, we registered it twice. And we were the lone no vote. We were the lone no vote. There's some options, I think, that we can do if we choose, and I would like to present them to you now, if I may, Madam Mayor. I would encourage payment.
Well, I have a question as well.
Okay.
I'm wondering, why is it that for fiscal year 2009-2010, our cost allocation is $26,267.80, but for fiscal year, that jumps up almost an additional $20,000 to $45,000. And was there a line item by line item review of the budget to say, you know what, that seems to be a little bit excessive, or that seems to be an unfair allocation from the county to this agency for work that otherwise the county is reaping the benefit for? Because this has the potential to become a bloated organization that everybody else has to pay for, but that the county reaps tremendous benefit from and knows that everybody else is going to pay for it. So I'm worried about creep from county to this commission because all the rest of us are paying for it. So so my first question is, how did we tack on an additional $20,000 in 1 year? And what is the plan to prevent creep from non-ICTC related activities, very focused, very tailored? Those are my 2 questions.
Let's speak to the first issue, the creeping, if you will. When we ask, and I think I opened my statement by saying over several tenures of several different mayors, we had asked for a detailed budget. We were not able to secure that. The information and the individuals who were making the presentation became, in my word, a little testy, and had made some very, I think, unbecoming remarks as it relates to the questions, and actually told us at one point to just, this is a county issue, so shut up and be quiet. That's my terms, not quite, it was harsh, but maybe not the exact verbiage. We protested loudly. And we said that we thought it was inappropriate for the comment to have been made. We thought the questions we were asking were appropriate questions. We are a jurisdiction, and we really wanted to be a team player. We wanted to actually move forward with this, and we wanted to have information, though, that so I, in particular, your liaison, would be able to bring it back and explain it to you. I apologize for not being able to get the information, but I have tried. Your city manager has tried through the management committee. We have gone as a team and tried. I went to the management committee and we did a 1-2 punch. Excuse me, Mr. Duran, I call it a 1-2 punch. You may want to soften that. But I think it was a 1-2 punch, and we still were not able to get anything. And I'm of the view that we were not able to get this because we seem to have been the only jurisdiction that was raising these objections. Keep in mind what's required for a quorum. And Mr. Edney touched upon it. Why would this be the county who have 2 votes? What's required for a quorum, and I raise that as we're looking at our bylaws, is a majority. It could be 2 members from the county, or 1. It could be 3 jurisdictions, could be 3 cities, or the IID. And that would constitute a quorum. El Centro could be absent and still have a quorum. And I thought that was inappropriate. I think it should have been, cities should have been on the top end, with IID and county being on the bottom end as far as constitution of a quorum. Although I have not missed a meeting, and I have been very diligent, and when I have missed a meeting, my alternate is Mr. Edney. He's been there, so I'm not sure if he could reflect upon any of the experiences he's had of the last, I think I missed 1 meeting and you went in my stead. But it is very difficult. But this, unfortunately, is what we have to work with.
Okay, but
Let me give you just a, let me try to give you.
But where we,
But let me, if you may.
no, I would like to finish my statement. I talked about I believe that our putting in place these safeguards will be in these bylaws. We're working on that now, and it was for that reason that I selected to be a part of that committee, so that I could try and safeguard our position as well as the position of the other jurisdiction, meaning the other cities, by being on this bylaws committee, so that this will not continue to occur, the creeping concept. Now, as it relates to your latter question, what had to do with the sheer amount, and that is when that was done in such a fluid way, and in my mind, in an unprofessional manner, but nonetheless, it occurred. And that's where we are.
Let me, Madam Mayor, just provide a little bit. In my 5 years as a representative for the Southern California Assessor, I had the opportunity to work very significantly with every county transportation commission in Southern California. I raised the objection at the beginning of my comments about how this was done. I will tell you, and I'll stand up for this, the cost for running a county transportation commission were never considered significantly, because quite honestly, we don't have enough money to run it. We wrote a 57-page report to the county about the options of setting up a county transportation commission. I'm quite certain that most of it was either never reviewed or ignored completely, because first of all, what you have is a budget here by an interim director that I quite honestly, based on my experience and based on discussions with others who run these things, is unrealistic from a staffing level for a brand new agency starting off. We cannot start the ICTC off with 6 employees. It's impossible. We're going to have to start out at a lower level and contract out the work. I will never suggest, as you said about the creeping, it is going to cost money for cities. It can provide us a benefit, because if we're at the table, if we're prepared, if we, as you know, as anybody who's on this council, as the city manager knows, we have missed deadlines with the state. So in that regard, it can. If we get our stuff in and we're prompt and we do it right, we have a chance to get more state and federal funding for transportation projects, some for housing. My issue still goes back to having worked with all the county transportation. Most of the county transportation commissions do have more members on the Board of Supervisors than any other agency within the jurisdiction. But there's a huge difference. In those counties, and I'll speak about Orange County and San Bernardino and Ventura, the population is significantly higher in the county than it is in individual cities. Thus, they have more representation. This county is not that way. The city of El Centro has the highest population and is actually significantly higher than the county. My concern is every time Ms. Sanders goes in and votes for the city, it doesn't take a quorum of the other members to throw her vote out. It takes 2 county supervisors.
And they have done that.
And exactly as she's explained. And we're out the window. No issue that we will ever address. And I'm not even talking about the other cities. I'm talking about the Board of Supervisors will be able to destroy any action that the city wants to play if they so desire, because their votes outnumber hers 2-1. That being said, we do have no choice at this matter. We have to be a member. ICTC now is the official agency to do the RTIP, the STIP funding. So if we're going to get our projects, and in the budget you saw a whole list of projects that are partially funded through the ICTC in this case, which used to be IVAG, which used to be SCAG. So we're very much, with all my ranting and raving, are caught in a rock and a hard place. We are stuck with what I think is a very likely unmanageable, likely will not serve necessarily the best interest of the city, but if we don't have a choice not to join, because otherwise none of our projects will ever be submitted.
Let me speak to the issue about the number of members or number of staff. That is a proposal. I'll grant it, that is a proposal, but the staffing levels have yet to be determined. The budget itself is yet to be determined because of the very issues you raise. So the commissioners are really looking at this very closely. They have those similar concerns from other jurisdictions, cities' jurisdiction. And so they are raising those very issues. While I don't have complete and concrete answers, I mean, my answers are complete, but they're not concrete because the budget is yet fluid and the staffing levels are yet fluid. But as it relates to the percentages and as it relates to the county, I was overruled several times.
Okay, well, we don't have a choice, and it sounds like maybe what we could be doing is seeking collaborative partnerships with our sister city agencies if we think that something else is going to be in the best interest.
Mayor, and I want to,
Yes, sir.
if I may, because this is obviously important because we worked for 5 years on this. On the allocation, the management committee came out with and I was part of a subcommittee, and there was several managers on this, also concerned about the allocation method. And there were a number of allocation methods looked at, particularly for the IAD, because there is no model. There is no utility. Utilities, by the way, serve in all these ICTs and COGS as ex officio. Right. So they don't pay. So we don't have to worry about it. Because this is a unique situation, we looked at several alternatives. Now, a year ago, to allocate some of these these deficits that the county indicated, they came out with a number, and it was very arbitrary. There was objections, but it went through. That subcommittee which I was on, we said, look, if IID is if they're going to be on this team, this board, and have a vote, and we're allocating by population, clearly we could take all the population of the IID, which would be 162,000 people, and we came back with, and it was my recommendation, and the rest of the management committee said, but at any level, it should be no less than what the highest agency is paying. In other words, they shouldn't be discounted. The management committee, after much discussions with IAD, recommended that they be paying whatever the highest agency was. So mathematically, you do it, just solve for X. And what you do is you double up your numbers. And it was, for the city of El Centro, it was a $3,500 change in these allocations. It was not very much. IAD objected, and what went forward and was adopted 8-1, was that they would pay an average of the 4 top. And the question was, 4 top payers, how did you arrive at the 4 top levels? And they said, it just seemed right. It was arbitrary. Just as arbitrary as any other allocation, because there is no model. So understand that we have been down this path. It's all been presented. So that's where the allocation. Now I'd like to go to the last item on the 44,000. We're putting that in our budget. Best information we have today is there is an indication that there's this large budget that they were being proposed. The commission has not adopted that. We just wanted to make sure we understood what it could cost. Now, I've had discussions with the interim director. Now, he's not the director. That's why they haven't adopted any of this. And he's asked me, well, what are the other alternatives without the county? And I gave him the IVRMA program that we have and IVECA program. We hire outside auditors, outside accountants, outside attorneys, and we operate for nickels. The Butte County Association of Governments, which is a larger county than us, has 7 members. By the way, the county gets 2 votes there. Chico's there, Butte County, Gridley, Paradise, etc. Their allocations, their payments from the agencies to them, and they run the buses and everything, is 0. They operate everything from their Caltrans dollars, and they have equivalent of Measure D. They do everything themselves. So when you're up and running, this should shrink down. The key on this is they need to appoint their director with the understanding what that director needs to do to keep these costs under control so we don't have the creep that occurs. Right now, we're operating the most expensive way to do this is doing it through an agency because, for example, the idea of the employees. I asked Butte County, are you in PERS? No. And BCAG, which is Butte County Association of Governments. They don't have any of those. They're a separate nonprofit. They formed like what we formed, and they handle all of that. So the point is we need a director appointed, but also that director needs to understand there are other ways to do it than the traditional, let's just hire another agency. I will tell you that we operate the IVMRA, and I'm going to be recommending, as this organization gets going, is that we transfer that to them. Why? It makes sense, and we're probably the most expensive way to do it. So we really need the director to get that final budget, and that's why there is no final budget. They wanted to do a final budget. I recommended in the management committee, which was also recommended, to just do a continuing resolution, get the director in. The commissioners are struggling with that still. I don't think they took an action, but they feel like they have to get a budget in. The answer is no, you don't, because you don't want to hire a bunch of people. And there was a question about what do we do July 1 if there's no director? And I had a discussion with some folks there, other managers, and I said, well, make the motion that we continue as we are now, but don't hire anybody. And the county, if you will, shouldn't be laying anybody off. I mean, this is not done yet. It's just taken 6 months longer than it should have. And we still do not have a director, but we may have one in the near future.
Madam Mayor, just a couple final comments. One, I want to reemphasize what Mr. Duran said about this is the only utility company in the state of California ever added as a voting member, even though, so my objection to that was I think the IID has a great merit involved in these things, but they are voting on where road dollars go in which they do not receive any of them. That is unheard of.
We objected to that.
The other issue is, I think there is at least a little better news in the thing. Before I left SCAG, I worked out a situation. It is very likely, depending on who the new director is and the regional council, that SCAG will agree to share office space with the ICTC and will cover the cost of that office space at least for the first full year, and then eventually ramp it up to an appropriate amount, which should help contain the cost. Somewhat. Well, because that's a pretty significant cost
and
factor.
there's still, Madam Mayor, if I may, I'm sorry that we're being so long-winded here on this issue, but this is a significant piece. There's still, as Mr. Duran said, we haven't got the director.
Right.
Budget isn't finalized.
Right.
Several jurisdictions have concerns, and they've voiced them. There's still LTA bylaws that are going to be folded in for that funding stream's allocation in the amount that is available. So there's still some means of identifying the various funding streams that could come in and flow and be what would be necessary for the budget. Mr. Edney just identified, and we've heard that verbally coming in, saying that SCAG is prepared to provide some office space. So therein will, I think, prevent some of the creeping and get us to a more concise budget so that when I come back to you, we'll have something that looks a little bit more pleasant than what I'm currently presenting.
Thank you. Mr. Silva?
Well, I think to put this in very simplistic terms, we don't have the vote to have any significant changes made to be able to accommodate our desires and opposition, and we can't afford not to be there. So I'm not sure what are the options we have.
Is that a motion?
That's the motion to approve.
A motion by Silva,
Second.
second by Sanders.
One
Yes.
final item is Mr. Duran alluded to putting other programs, countywide programs. I will suggest to you that we will need to, at a future date, reform the Imperial Valley Association of Governments, which is what I tried to tell them at the beginning, is don't get rid of it, join them. But we now, under a county transportation commission, you can't run a recycling program. You have no authority under statute. So we really needed both of them together with the same board. So at some point, 6 months, a year down the line, we will have to come back, Ms. Sanders, and reform IVAG
Or something.
or something along those lines.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion by Silva, second by
Sanders.
Sanders. Ballard?
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Okay.
much. I can go back in now and,
Put a big under protest when you give them the check.
all right.
They don't.
Okay, we're moving on then to item number 17, which is our ordinance with regard to public project contracting. There is a revised ordinance that was provided to council this evening.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. This is primarily a threshold amount change to the language. The overall language hasn't really changed that much. It's to move forward on our voter-approved El Centro City Charter. That we're increasing the dollar limit for the informal contract procedure from $25,000 to $200,000. This includes city employee projects, negotiated contract and purchase orders. And we also have the language in there, if we do go through the informal bid process, we get a project over the $200,000 limit. If it's less than 10% over, up to $220,000, council can award that contract with a 4/5 vote. The standard formal contract procedure will now be at $200,000. It was $100,000. It's bumped up to $200,000. Public projects under $200,000, it was $25,000. We've gone to $200,000. May be awarded by the purchasing officer and city manager. And then the plans and specifications for public projects can be approved by the Director of Public Works and go out to bid, and that was bumped up from $100,000 to $200,000. Any questions?
I have one question. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, Ms. Sanders and I, this comes out of the Charter Task Force. This is just an example of, once the charter was passed, our continued efforts to create more efficiency in government. It's not certainly a way to take authority away from the council or not follow, but as you said, Madam Mayor, people get tired of government and its time that it takes to do everything. There are some really significant things like the restroom issues that we can get done if we, and because of the government process, state, federal, and local, to bid every single thing out for these little projects like 2 little restrooms is quite honestly not very cost effective. What we're wasting in time could actually get an informal bid, go through it, review it, make sure it meets our standards, and award, get it out and get it done. So I don't want you to think this was taking away authority of the council. It was quite honestly just allowing, I think, in Ms. Sanders and I's opinion, an opportunity for us to be more efficient and expedite projects that were within a range. And I very much appreciate the 4/5 if it goes up, because that should happen.
No, and I think in addition to that, it's going to more than likely keep those dollars locally.
Exactly.
That's true.
My question is, several of the recommendations that have come back from the Charter City Task Force have included consideration for impacts to the hospital. I'm wondering, with regard to this particular topic of increasing the amounts, if there was any impact to the hospital that we should otherwise consider.
Well, only that they would be governed by the thresholds here once they're established.
So the thresholds will carry over
Right.
to the hospital as well. There's no additional language that we need to add.
Not unless you want to increase the thresholds for the hospital, then you would need, specific language to address that.
Okay.
So if the hospital wanted a higher threshold and the council is willing to give it to them, then theoretically, we would need to amend the language to provide.
Well, I think her question, what about the authority? We just said purchasing manager, city manager. Does it automatically assume the executive director of the hospital?
Yeah, the hospital has its own policies and procedures, and they were waiting for the city to finally act so that
They'll
they could
adjust their procedure based on our
right.
threshold.
And they were waiting for the thresholds to be established so they could move forward
So
with theirs.
this would have application to the hospital as well?
Correct.
That was my question.
You just need to
Excellent.
amend your policy to who actually has the authority to do it.
It's very similar to your $50,000 contract that we had before. They just needed to amend their policies. They just can't be in contravention with our policy.
Perfect.
Right.
Okay.
They wanted to amend it up to $100,000 for the CEO, and this would allow them to go to $200,000 if they wanted.
Excellent. Okay. So we'll come back to council. Is there any discussion? Then we'll look for approval of ordinance number 1007. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of El Centro amending sections 2-185.11 and 2-185.17 to division 5.1, Article 4, Chapter 2 of the Code of the City of El Centro, setting dollar limits and adoption of plans and specifications for public works projects, waive reading and pass as a first reading.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Sanders, second by Edney. All those in favor, please ballot.
And that motion carries.
Yes, sir. Okay, we are asking for a 5-minute break. We will reconvene in 20 minutes to...
And for those who would like to step out onto 14th Street, there is a presentation being made on a vehicle that the chief talked to you about several months ago.
I think we're ready to get started. We're now on the item number 18. Discussion necessary action regarding the annual review of the El Centro Downtown Business Improvement District. Ms. Piedro, is this your presentation?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members. I do have a snack on my mouth here, so bear with me. The item before you is actually the renewal process for the renewal of the Downtown El Centro Business Improvement District for fiscal year 2010 and 11. The estimated amount that we expect to receive for the bid is approximately $30,000. This is based on a little over 100 businesses currently operating within the downtown bid area, which basically consists of Main Street between 8th Street and 4th Street. Part of the renewal process requires that we present you with a budget that has been prepared by the Bid Advisory Board, which is, the board is actually appointed or formed by the City Council. And they have provided a report which basically indicates the anticipated revenues, the activity as far as finances is concerned as it pertains to the bid, and also a report on events and projects they have completed and projects they expect to complete in the future for this next fiscal year. During the last renewal period that we had for the 2009 2010 fiscal year for the bid, you directed us as staff to explore the possibility of establishing a property-based bid. We solicited proposals and we engaged the services of Mr. Marco Lemandri, which is very experienced in establishing business improvement districts and also property-based districts. He has held meetings with the bid board and has also made contact through a survey and phone conversations with several of the downtown businesses to explore the possibility of creating a property-based bid. Based upon results that he has received from surveys that were sent out to the property owners, it appears that at this time the property owners are not interested in seeing a property-based bid established. He is going to provide a full report to us or to the council during your meeting of June 16th. And so that's going to be forthcoming. But I did want to advise you that based on preliminary contact on that survey result, that is in fact the decision, or at least that's what we are gathering from the property owners along Main Street. The recommendation for you tonight is to consider adopting the resolution accepting the budget that is presented before you. Just to point out, on page 3 of the budget for the bid, it indicates the activity that we have for the bid, starting from fiscal year 2006-07 up to the fiscal year ending 2010. If there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer those questions. We also have the president of the bid here, Mr. Tom Curtis, in case there's any specific questions relating to activities or the preparation of this budget.
Ms. Piedra, with regard to the page 3, financial activity of bid during fiscal year 2009-2010, summary of assessments, and then we have the income and expenditure box here.
Yes.
How realistic is it to expect that 100% of the uncollected assessments going back to 2006 are going to be collected?
And this is an issue that obviously over the years, in the past 6 years, we have encountered that we do not collect 100% of the bid fees. However, we're required to present you with what the actual bid assessments or the bid fees. Obviously, in an ideal situation, you would be collecting these funds, and so we have an obligation to present you with what the bid fees or appropriations should be for that particular fiscal year. So that's why you see these numbers.
But here's my concern. We've then gone forward on pages 4 and 5 and developed a bid budget proposal for the next coming fiscal year based on an income total of almost $64,000, and yet probably a more realistic number would be to take the estimated assessments to be levied in the fiscal year of $30,000, although noting that that's still significantly more than what was even collected this last year. We only collected so far 17,000. I mean, our highest year ever, the only in 06-07 was collected 25,000.
That is correct.
So I think we're being unrealistically optimistic with regard to the assessments to be collected. I just don't want us to get into a situation where we build a budget with unrealistic income expectations and then have to start slashing expenses or someone having to make up the shortfall.
And that is correct. That is correct, and that is an issue that the bid board can address. As pointed out in that actual page that you're looking at, the bid funds that have been received by the city and have been dispersed back to the bid board as per our administration agreement, and I'm looking at the box where we disclose the income, it is actually $25,991 what has been collected for this fiscal year. And in looking at it, that's been kind of the average that has been received.
Well, let me ask, other members of council have questions with regard to the document before us?
Well, I guess my question would be is, if you look at the front box and it says we've collected 17,000, then why did the city disperse 25?
If we had a previous balance in the account.
Oh, we collected
then-
some more
yes.
money from a previous?
Yes, and so we dispersed it to them.
All right.
Madam Mayor, as you know, Mr. Solomon and I would be your committee as it relates to downtown revitalization, and this fell under that purview. Mrs. Piedra certainly acknowledged that we had met with the members of the Downtown Association as well as the consultant. When we had our initial meeting, we came back and reported out that we didn't believe that they would be interested in moving forward with a property-based bid. And in looking at this, I see this, while it seems very, it seems high as far as their collection rate, I want to make some assumptions here, and it certainly is for consideration. This is their anticipated amount to collect, much like as we would have a accounts receivable. Now, I'm not sure if they're going to discount some of this for individuals or how they're going to play this out. But if they don't receive it, obviously they will not be able to spend it. So if they don't receive it, you can't spend it. So what I say, all right, if they believe they're going to receive $63,000, and if you received only 25, then you'll adjust your budget downward. And that would be up to them, would it not, Mrs. Piedra?
Yes, and actually,
Okay.
historically, the bid board has managed to maintain the expenses in relation to the
accordance
income.
to their- okay.
So they have not had a deficit. They try to be consistent with what's being received.
All right. We've looked at all avenues. I don't see how we can. We've looked at all the avenues that the council have asked us to do, Mr. Solomon and I, and working with the staff, and trying to look at ways to perhaps increase their membership participation. And we're just not getting there. Just not getting there.
Maybe we could hear from the bid board with regard to their bid budget proposal. Again, we're looking at a budget that's built on an assumption of collecting $33,000 worth of bid fees. And I think that's a little unrealistic, but maybe Mr. Curtis could. But maybe we've planted some money trees downtown. Don't know about.
Can we get that planter down there?
There you go.
That'd be good. I didn't hear your question.
Mr. Curtis, my question has to do with anticipated revenue coming into the bid. In our highest year ever, the most we've collected is $25,000. 2008, 2009, and then 2009, 2010, we're collecting about $17,000 in assessments, and yet bid fees for your budget this coming year are estimated to be $33,000, almost twice as much as what's actually been collected the last 2 years. And I'm just wondering how it is that $33,000 was decided.
It was decided based on the amount of businesses that are downtown and their participation in the bid. We have absolutely no authority to go down and say, you've got to pay this. We can go down and talk to them about it, which we do very periodically. Another thing that we do, as was directed by the council, I think 2 years ago, was that we took the collections away from the city, and we're doing it on our own now. And I'd like to kind of reiterate what Councilwoman Sanders said, is that if we don't have the money, we just don't spend it. So we operate on what we get in. And while we anticipate getting $33,000, we always have to anticipate something. I mean, we just can't come to you and say, well, we think we're going to get this. We have a base that's how much money that we should be getting in. But there are extenuating circumstances in almost every business down there, in that they're really struggling to hold on or whatever. But we feel that the Business Improvement District down there is an added asset for bringing business downtown and endeavoring to make the downtown a better place for people to come to. So we want to put our best foot forward in terms of saying, okay, well, this is how much money that we should budget out, because that's how much money we are actually due. And in a perfect world, we would get $33,000. In a perfect world, we wouldn't have to worry about it. Everybody would pay in what they're supposed to. Then we would get the $33,000. But we're living in a far short of a perfect world right now. So if we collect half of it, whatever we collect, whatever we get in, we do whatever we have to do to make that fit for our year. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
That's good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I do concur with the mayor that I think from a planning perspective, it might be a better mechanism to plan with more realistic revenue collections. And if more money comes in, then that gives you an opportunity to rethink where you spend that money, as opposed to going the other way around and having to cut back on projects. And I think it would allow you to prioritize, from my perspective, in a better way. I don't have any problem with the bid. I think that you do bring added value to the downtown, and I will support the item, but I do think that perhaps for the future, for next year, we can receive a more realistic revenue expenditure projects budget.
Yeah, in answer to that, we may have a more realistic figure to go with, because we will then, at that time next year, we will have in our collection revenue, or our collection machine that goes out and collects. We actually have to buy debt, and then they go into level 1, level 2. So we have to pay them ahead of time in order to collect, and we have had a real good response from them, but there are some people that are still holdouts. So we'll have a better idea next year.
Mr. Curtis, the other question I had with regard to this agenda item was maybe some of the dates were misstated in the report. The date for the ice cream social is scheduled for July 23rd. It says 2011, though. Should that be 2010?
It's 2010, and it's 29th of July, not the 23rd.
Okay.
I think I misled you there last time I was here. I'm sorry.
Okay, so
I apologize for that.
7/29.
Yes, ma'am.
And then Oktoberfest, it says scheduled for October 16, again 2011. Are we thinking that's
Yes.
October 16, 2010?
What we try to do is project out our events,
Okay.
so that we get our calendar set, and I think what happened was they put 2011 instead of 2010, because we bumped up against people who were having festivals and different things
Right.
on days that we wanted to have them.
Right.
So this year, I asked the board if they would put together the calendar events for the rest of 2010, and then right into 2011.
Okay.
So that's the reason that got that way. I did get some blowback from the bid board for doing that, but I didn't want to take a chance on doing exactly what we did this year, in terms of we had to keep setting our date ahead for the farmers market, and I think it hurt us very badly to do that.
Ms. Sanders, no questions? Mr. Levy, Mr. Silva? Okay. Return it back to council and move for approval of resolution number 1055. Resolution of City Council, City of El Centro, accepting the budget report for the El Centro Downtown Business Improvement District for July 1, 2010 through June 30, 2011.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Sanders, second by Silva.
Motion carries 3 with 1 no.
Moving then to approval of resolution number 10-56, resolution of the City Council of the City of El Centro declaring its intention to levy an annual assessment within the established El Centro Downtown Business Improvement District for July 1, 2010 through June 30, 2011.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Silva, second by Sanders.
That motion carries 3 with 1 no.
Just want to make a comment, Mr. Evans.
I think I've made it for 5 years.
Yes, you have made it for 5 years. Thank you very much for being here. All right, moving on. Item number 19 is the appointment of a member to our Community Services Commission. Mr. De La Garza is interested in continuing and would like to be reappointed, and I will put forth his name in.
Move the mayor's appointment.
Second.
Motion by Edney, second by Sanders.
Motion carries 4-0.
Alrighty. We have added items now that we will address. The first is 2 items coming out of closed session. Resolution number 10-57. Yeah. Resolution of City Council of City of El Centro establishing terms and conditions of employment, including compensation for fiscal year 2009-2010 for the certified water treatment plant operators.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Edney, second by Sanders.
Motion carries 4-0.
Second item coming out of closed session would be resolution number 10-58, resolution of the City Council of the City of El Centro establishing terms and conditions of employment, including compensation for fiscal year 2009-2010 for certified wastewater treatment plant operators.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Silva, second by Sanders.
That motion carries 4-0.
Next is an added item to adopt a resolution designating authorized agents to provide to the Office of Emergency Services for all matters pertaining to such state disaster assistance, the assurances and agreements required. This is a report from our Director of Finance. If you could explain them. Well, first, I guess I'd ask the City Attorney for explanation as why this is an added item to the agenda, please.
Well, the need to take action arose after the agenda was posted, and there's an immediate need to take action.
Thank you.
So basically, on May 14th of 2010, FEMA and CalEMA conducted an applicant's briefing. This was to inform prospective applicants of the available assistance and eligibility requirements for obtaining federal assistance under the declared event. The briefing included applicant facility work, cost eligibility, documenting the projects, record keeping, and so on. In order to start the process, and be able to obtain funding. At this meeting, we submitted the application, a request for public assistance, the project application for federal assistance, project application, California Disaster Assistance Act program. But one item that was pending is this resolution that is before you for your approval. It's the resolution where the City of El Centro authorizes the agents to apply and file with the State of California Emergency Management Agency for all matters pertaining to applications for federal and state disaster assistance for the FEMA Baja Imperial County earthquake event.
Any questions from council? Okay, then we would look to approve resolution number 10-59, resolution of the City Council of City of El Centro, California, designating the City of El Centro's authorized agents to apply and file with the State of California Emergency Management Agency for all matters pertaining to applications for federal and state disaster assistance for FEMA 19-11 DR, Baja Imperial County earthquake event.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Edney, second by Sanders.
Motion carries 4-0.
The next added item is approval of a resolution to award a contract with regard to our indoor sports complex parking lot. Again, Mr. Hernandez, if you could state for the record the reason for the addition of this item.
Yes, the need to take action arose after the agenda was posted, and there's an immediate need to take action. Otherwise, the CDBG funding would be jeopardized.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Ms. Piedra?
Yes, this item pertains to the parking lot, the new construction of the parking lot in relation to the installation of the indoor sports complex. We had a bid opening on Monday, May the 17th, and you have before you the company that staff is recommending that we award the bid to. It's Willock Contracting Incorporated. They actually completed the demolition work, but as you can see from the bid sheet that's provided, they provided the lowest and responsive bidder in this particular case. We have the base bid, which basically consists of the new construction of the parking lot, and then we are including the landscaping for this parking lot. Therefore, we're recommending that you approve this bid in the amount of $265,855.34 and allow us to establish a contingency of $29,000. This particular portion of the project is being funded through CDBG funds, and we are on an expenditure rate situation where we have to start our project so that we can expend these funds. Thus, we're recommending that you approve this resolution.
Ms. Piedra, it is 26,000 as opposed to 29, is that correct?
It's 26,000.
And how pleased have we been with the contractor's responsiveness with the work done to date?
And perhaps Mr. John Gay can add, but we haven't had any issues, as it relates to the project or labor compliance.
They're wrapping up the demolition of the plunge site itself, and we've done very well with them. Their bid came in originally at $190,000. We had anticipated a $350,000 demolition contract. So at this time we are under budget. There will be some change orders due to quantity, but we're well within our budget right now.
Quality of their work, Mr. Gay?
Very good. Very good. And I can attest to that.
Questions?
Well, except for the noise next to my office. Mr. Gay, I just wanted to say it's very nice to see you. I don't think you've been in front of the council in many, many months.
He hasn't been home either.
Huh?
And burning the midnight oil.
It's good to see you. Mr. Keller? Ms. Sanders? Okay, then we are looking to approve resolution number 10-60. Resolution of the City Council of the City of El Centro awarding the bid and authorizing the execution of a contract for the Adams Avenue Indoor Sports Complex parking lot project.
So move.
Second.
Motion
Thank
by
you.
Sanders, second by Silva. Please ballot.
Motion carries 4-0.
Excellent. Next two are informational items. This is a time for public comment. Okay, we've already taken our recess, so let's go right into our mayor and council member reports. Ms. Sanders, would you like to start off with the league dinner tomorrow night?
The league dinner is tomorrow night. I want to thank you for reminding me, Madam Mayor. It will be hosted by the city of Hopeville. So we're asking all of you to please join us there. One of the things on the agenda will be a selection of a SCAG representative. As you know, Mr. Edney announced that he was retiring, so anyone on this council willing to step up and take that responsibility will be greatly appreciated. I also want to announce that on your behalf, I visited Congressman Bob Filner had an artistic discovery, and that was held on Friday, April 30th. It was the most outstanding feat. I had not seen so many young people with such artistic talent. It was truly well attended. In fact, it was an overflow crowd with beautiful, beautiful artwork. So I brought you a brochure, Madam Mayor, so that you could have that for your
collection.
For your collection, absolutely.
Thank you.
I also attended in your behalf, and as Mr. Silva was one of the participants in the asthma awareness walk, and that was held at the Southwest High School. The hospital had a team, and Mr. Silva was a part of that team. I cannot tell you if they won or not, but they did.
I will tell you that we did not.
I was trying to see if I could identify them as a winner, but it didn't happen. So they did everything from egg roll to all kinds of wonderful feats, but it was for a very good cause, and that's asthma awareness. And then the third item I attended in your behalf was presentation of certificates to individuals who were honored by the Edwards Chapel Church, one of which was Conrad Harrison. And Mr. Harrison extends to this council his appreciation for that certificate, and that too was a well-attended item. And it was so nice to see so many individuals there who were being honored. So that's it for now.
I'm wondering, do you, Ms. Sanders, or Ms. Piedra, have an update on our census numbers? How well the community seems to be
Yes.
doing with regard to...
Thank you for asking, and I will allow Mrs. Piedra to give her presentation first, and then I will follow. Thank you for asking that.
Actually, as you know, the census office is using our incubator facility, so they've been using it to provide training for the census takers to go out to the homes and start that process. We have done outreach to the apartment complexes. We have a link on our website, and so we, to the extent that we can in events, in whatever community events that we participate in, we provide information as it relates to the census. I believe they're seeing a higher response rate for our city, which is good. So the awareness has been created.
You can still send your mailers in, yes?
No.
It's all personal contact from this point
yes,
out?
if you haven't sent your mailers in, yes, you're done.
They're going to be contacted.
Okay.
And it is now time to expect someone to come to your door. The numerators are out, and so they will be at your door knocking. As you know, as a complete count committee chair here, we were able to go out into the community to, again, spread the word that expect individuals to come to your door, treat them with kindness, and please do not run them away. It is very vital that we get this count and that it be complete, because we all know the value of that, not only for our representation and how our districts are drawn, but more importantly, how the dollars come in and that we can use. And the item just before was our CDBG money, and that's one of the tools that we have to begin to do things that are so important for this community. So yes, our percentage numbers are higher this year, 2010, than they were in 2000.
Excellent.
My concern on that is that one of your counters came by my house the other day and spoke to my wife and was instructed that for some reason they were missing every single person on our street.
If you've already filled it out, you just acknowledge that, and they should have left you quietly alone and went to the next house. I hope they did that.
Oh, I wasn't there. I
Okay.
think she just answered their questions again, because obviously if they don't have it,
Okay. Well,
I mean, that's
think
a concern, and I
think-
think your points are valid. I think it's because of the numbers.
The other issue too is we had to do, before the census started, we had to do an update of addresses that were included in our city. So perhaps maybe, because I know we submitted, because we work in conjunction with planning, to include all the addresses that were annexed into the city after 2000. So perhaps maybe they didn't include that area, and it should have been included.
Ms. Piedra, I think we did that address last April.
That's correct. So it's recent, so it should have been included.
No,
April of 09. April of 09.
And a lot of cities missed that. We got ours
Yes,
in.
we got it.
got theirs in. So,
They're probably still reviewing that back in
Yeah.
Washington.
exactly.
I believe so.
That's why they're doing the hand count.
Yeah.
That's why that.
Well, one way, that's why she went ahead and did it,
Yeah.
because it goes to your point. It is important that
Yes.
we get everybody counted.
If I can follow that, while we submitted that in April, Ms. Piedra has made sure that they have received all of our annexations.
Yes.
And the building department has given them all updates on buildings since then.
And that's why the
So they have all
enumerator,
of it.
that's why the enumerators was able to locate you.
Exactly.
Because of that new information.
The updated information.
We also was struggling with some issues as relates to home foreclosures and displaced families, the earthquake.
The earthquake.
That really put some challenges before the
Well,
enumerators.
Ms. Sanders, you just tell Mr. Fielder to add another 10 or 15,000 to the city of El Centro for those issues, and we'll just accept it.
You know, as an unfortunate, if we're not careful, California stands to lose a seat.
Seat in the Congress.
Yes, we stand to lose a seat because California as a state is not doing as well as it could do. So we stand to lose. So that's why we've got to push.
Do we get to pick which one we want to kick out?
It may
Preferably
be.
from Northern California.
It may be. We may get that selection.
Okay.
So thanks for asking. I forgot that.
There are some counties that we just.
I'll be brief. I just want to thank the mayor and the city manager for attending the SCAG annual General Assembly and retreat, and it was a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed it. They shattered. I mean, it was just incredible. I had said, I think, when I was coming in as president, we were very pleased because they had 500 people. They had 693. In fact, we took over the whole place, I think. It was a tremendous event, but I think there was a lot of good discussion. The SB 375 discussion, I think, was outstanding, and they haven't taken me off the mailing list yet. I think I wish they would, but I did get an email today. They did send the target numbers to the California Air Resources Board along with all the MPOs this week. So we'll probably hear in late summer, probably September, of what the Southern California target is for SB 375, which will be interesting to see in light of what potentially may happen in November with the election, because there's certainly a possibility that SB 375 and AB 32 are going to be rolled back or stopped, depending on whether the proposed ballot measure goes through, and depending on who wins the governor's race. So anyway, thank you guys.
I don't have any comments.
Well, I thought, Mr. Silver, you were going to announce that you came to the prayer breakfast and read the resolution on behalf of the mayor.
I did that. That was a very enjoyable event. I also did Ms. Sanders indicated, I did the asthma awareness relay. That was a lot of fun, but we did not win a single event. But we had lots of fun trying.
Grace has had me extremely busy signing proclamations and sending me and the rest of you everywhere with regard to those. The one that I'll mention, since he's had a big impact here, is Mr. John Layton's retirement. I went to his retirement dinner. Happy to report that finally, you may recall that several years ago we appointed a task force of Mr. Solomon and myself to work on the issue of animal control. And we finally have a nonprofit agency in the Valley that will focus exclusively on low-cost spay and neuter clinics. So you can expect to see some additional information coming forward. The group's name is SANS, Spay and Neuter of the Desert Society, is what we came up with. So anyway, that's we're moving forward finally with that. I mentioned that the Rotary had their annual district conference here, and again, they were absolutely so impressed with everything that was going on here with regard to agriculture and also renewable energy. I had the opportunity to spend Mother's Day weekend of all weekends on the USS Abraham Lincoln as we were cruising around out there in the sea. And it was an incredibly memorable experience. And I did not see any oil, but they asked for our thoughts post cruise, and I said that I was absolutely amazed at the pride, the professionalism, the dedication of the crew of the military that were there. It was a phenomenal experience. The last thing I do want to report on, though, is SCAG General Assembly. I mean, we all know that Mr. Edney is very well regarded and well thought of here in the community. You would have thought that the Pope was on site in La Quinta. Wherever I went, as soon as they found out that I even knew John, they were, oh, Mr. Edney this and John that, and he's done this and he's so great. And I'm like, John Edney? Are we talking about that John Edney? No, John, I mean, it was a phenomenal event, but what came back to me time after time after time is what an outstanding representative of this community and how well you represented us all your years and dedications with SCAG. So thank you very much for that. Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Duran? Wasn't it like being with royalty wherever we went? It was just great.
Well, look at that. But I would think having worked in large COGS, which is the Maricopa Association of Government, not as large as SCAG, but pretty cotton picking big. The members there highly, really look at what Mr. Councilman
Yes.
Edney did during his time and how they moved the organization forward. He was also part of establishing the director and the new staff that were there,
Right.
very much instrumental, and how they said, we're not even the same organization.
Yeah.
We deal with constituents. For example, I've got another meeting next week with the director. This is probably more meetings in the last 2 years than what they've had in the last decade. Probably, okay, 2 decades. So, and we do video conferencing, and Ventura's in one little box on the screen, and we're all participating as managers. It's where it should be, and that's what this organization has really evolved. And I want to thank Mr. Edney. We're connected again, and I think there was a real problem of belief that we were not connected to SCAG, and this is the way it should work.
Just one more thing, and I think at a previous meeting, I think it was Mr. Edney or someone had suggested the idea of moving the council meetings to Tuesdays. And I, for one, I think that's something that I would support, and I don't know whether we can bring this back on an agenda in the future, but...
Your hospital board meet on Tuesday?
What's the fourth Tuesday, though? So if we, as long as we keep on the first and third, but Mr. Edney has a conflict on
The third Tuesday.
the third Tuesday. So what I would like to do is, let's bring this back as an agendized item for the first meeting in June, and kick around some ideas with regard to when we can move it. You have conflicts with the with the college?
Right, yeah. If the college meets on the third Wednesdays of the month, so I haven't been able to attend those meetings, but yeah.
Well, let's keep in mind, as Ms. Sanders knows, I mean, this is a wide variety issue. It's not just related to one thing. Ms. Sanders knows that the League of Cities schedules almost everything it does on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, recognizing that most of California meets their councils on Mondays and Tuesdays. We obviously know about the issue at SCAG, and although my good friend the mayor could have raised this question 4 years ago when I was traveling to LA on Wednesday nights.
Did he bring it up then? No.
No, but you could have raised
Heaven
it.
help
Any of my
those
nice
who
colleagues could have raised it.
All right.
But that being said, if we're going to participate in SCAG, not only as the regional council member, but as a policy committee member, it would be very helpful. And then in light of, Mr. Silva's issue with Wednesday night, it makes practical sense for us to consider it. And I just would indulge that I would not be able to go the first and third because I have a all-day commitment, permanent commitment on the third Tuesday of the month.
Is there a downside to meeting on Mondays?
I will having served for 13 years in the city that had Mondays, so you'll know what you're going to run into.
Holiday.
Sports.
Well, and
That's what I give
Mr.
you. I had council members say, do we really have to do this?
No, I work on Monday nights. I can't be here.
Oh, but you know what? We could meet on Monday night if you had a big 47-inch screen color TV right there in front on top of your head.
I ran for 13 years at the city of Avondale. Our meetings were on Mondays.
Well, if we went to a Tuesday, second and fourth, and then we'd have to move the hospital board meeting. But maybe that's doable. Maybe we look to Tuesday. Because right now the hospital meets the fourth Tuesday.
The other alternative, and we can talk about this when it comes, but I'm trying so that when it comes we have some potential opportunities. My commitment on the third Tuesday is during the day.
Oh, okay.
If we didn't meet in closed session at noon, I could meet it in the evening. So we could do closed session after on that meeting, or we could do it before as a possibility. I'm just throwing that out.
Could we meet at 5?
Yeah, closed session at 5.
That's what I'm saying. We could do that on that alternative day.
Let's try that, because then we don't have to mess with the hospital. So can we bring this back as an action item then, Ms. Caldwell?
Just as a reminder, the Planning Commission meets on the first Tuesday of the month, so they'd have to adjust.
So it's either moving the hospital or the...
Well, we can move them.
The Planning Commission can move their meeting.
Move them to Wednesdays.
Sorry, Bill.
Sorry about that, Mrs. Villatanya.
Okay, so that will come back. And with regard, we'll talk about SCAG tomorrow. How many people do we have coming from El Centro?
For what?
For the League of Cities dinner tomorrow night?
3?
I'm going.
I'm going.
I'm going.
I don't have to come, Mr.
Oh, I sent my response in.
You have just the 3, me, Cheryl, and Mr. Silva?
And myself.
Let me just know, I told this to the mayor, I would certainly enjoy going to meeting, but my daughter is graduating from San Diego State tomorrow night, and I would not miss that.
Under those circumstances, we
We'll
will excuse you.
Just as
But
one time.
3, well, you know, we really struggled with these dates. These are this is some of our challenges. We struggle with these dates.
Ms. Sanders, I would just suggest, because it just seems that I mean, I've obviously had my commitment to SCAG the last 3 years that has interfered because it's always on Thursdays, but have you proposed to the membership a survey to see if a breakfast meeting and or a lunch meeting on some day might see? We do seem to have this continual issue. It's always on that Thursday night, and you know, you have chamber mixers and other things. I don't know if there's an
chamber mixer tomorrow night too.
And there's a chamber mixer tomorrow night too.
Well, we have proposed everything, but we can.
Well, maybe we could meet by video conference.
Maybe we can talk about it tomorrow. Mr. Duran, will you be working on the brag list for us then?
Oh, yes.
Okay. All right. I think we're
Brag,
done.
not bride.
I think we're done with council. We'll go now into redevelopment.
Motion to approve the consent calendar on our agenda.
Second. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought my second was sufficient.
Motion carries.
Okay. Did we need to or do again the business improvement district? Was Mr. Curtis going to say anything additional, or?
Actually, this item pertains to the contribution, the $10,000 that we set aside in our budget to provide assistance to implement the downtown business improvement district.
Okay.
Attached is a letter. Mr. Curtis unfortunately had to step out. He
I see.
had to go and rest
Thank you.
his leg as a result of a surgery he had. But he did provide to you, and it's part of your packet, a letter indicating the use of the $10,000, which is basically going towards the labor for the administrative assistant coordinator that they have, and also the maintenance person that's assisting them. And so they provide this report in order for us to be able to release the $10,000 contribution. The Vice President, Mr. Jason Jackson, is here, so in case there's any specific questions you may have.
So, Ms. Pedro, this would have been money budgeted for this year anyway. It's now just a timing to release the funding.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
It is money we have budgeted.
Any questions?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by Sanders, second by Silva. Blah.
Hold on, let me turn.
Is it on?
Yeah, I
Okay.
had it off.
There we go.
I'm sorry, Sanders
And
and
Silva.
motion carries 3 with 1 no.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Took me a minute there.
Were you done?
I'm like, what?
Let's go.
No, okay, I think that's, last is an informational item. We're good to go. Thank you all very much.